And hello to YouTube and Twitch. So, we are here reading Abolition, Feminism Now by Angela Y. Davis, Gina Dent, Erica Menes, and Beth E. Richie. And yes, it has been a while since we read. Mostly gone, okay. Well then, I suggest don't go near the bees because you're allergic. But yeah. So we are just about halfway through the book. And one of the things I like about their writing, their collective writing, is that it really puts into context ideas that we mostly have, that most of us on the left already have. So we have these ideas of abolition. We have ideas of police abolition, of prison abolition, but also ideas that are rooted in feminist ideals, not so much feminism as a movement, because we know the racist history of feminism as a movement. But we have all of those ideas, but it puts into historical and necessary context all of these ideas that we already have. So what they're doing is giving us a language by which we can actually articulate these ideas. When we stopped more than a month ago here, they were talking about the relationship between state violence and individualized sexual violence. And you cannot separate the ongoing violence of colonization from the challenges that we face as neocolonial societies. Because ideas of abolition work towards the challenging of the prison industrial complex, working towards indigenous self-determination, and rooting ideas of safety within an anti-colonial or decolonial framework. And this is the organizing mission of abolition feminism. So now we get to page 117, which we stopped more than a month ago, called Ongoing Movements, Familiar Tensions. And we shall begin. Contemporary uprisings have surfaced familiar tensions. Urgent organized calls to defund the police are met with cautious resistance from advocates who express concern for women who have been sexually assaulted or people who need protection from abusive partners and require emergency intervention. I see this as a red herring. Why I see it as a red herring is because it uses abuse against women and femmes as a cudgel. And it says, oh, but these are problems that exist within our society. How are we going to fix them? Without actually fixing the root cause of those problems within our current society with the police in existence. So it is completely what's the word I'm looking for? The only way I can say it is that it is a red herring. It's expressing concern for the problem, but not willing to actually fix the situation right now as it is. Not realizing that the existence of the police adds to the problem. It treats the symptoms, not the cause. Exactly. And this is why I'm getting sick again, by the way, because medicine treats the symptom, not the cause. I do not want to be sick. I haven't been able to go to the gym in over a month, and but these emergency interventions are roadblocked by the police. They give the existence of the police inserts this red tape that prevents organizations from doing certain work in emergency interventions. And I'm not saying that that legislation exists for no reason. It absolutely exists for a reason. However, the way in which the police go about doing those jobs, it means that there's an unnecessary third party that sort of makes the situation worse. Despite the vibrant landscape of abolition feminist organizing and the powerful interventions across decades, like the Moment of Truth, Incite, Critical Resistance statements, the current political moment, these echo an earlier carceral nightmare when anti-gender violence activists reinvested in law and order politics. And investing in law and order politics is treating the symptoms and not the cause. And organizations that buy into this, they get more funding. They get far more funding from governments. And that's the point, really, that government and its subsidiaries don't want these outside organizations to firstly upstage them, and secondly, do things that are outside of government frameworks of what is permissible to change according to the elite. They don't want to challenge that elite. The uprisings against police violence that took place in the spring and summer of 2020 created an opportunity for feminist anti-violence organizations to resist, organize, make visible the violence of the state, and also created an opportunity to consolidate and deepen existing forms of state power. And that is... The state will always respond the only way the state knows how. The state will always resort to its first port of call: violence. Each new iteration of federal and state laws, ostensibly designed to protect vulnerable women and girls, also represents potential concessions to carceral responses, framing carceral creep as inevitable. Thank you. The police state will always pretend, the police and the carceral state will always pretend like they are the answer to these problems. In the same way that struggles for accountability from the state for one killer cop can deflect attention away from the omnipresent violence of policing, concerns about what to do with the serial rapist or the long-term domestic abuser are put forth as a reality check for overly optimistic abolitionists to illustrate their dismissal of gender violence. And it really is. Ultimately, when people rely on on the carceral state, they are dismissing gender violence as something important to address in our society. Because they don't want to fix the problem. They just want the surface level to be clean. It's like removing people off the streets whenever there's a huge international conference or whenever there's huge sports events. They're not solving homelessness. They're just cleaning up the streets. Of course, these are not new political predicaments. Contemporary tensions between those working to liberate Black lives and those committed to gender justice echo these earlier dynamics. The current iteration of this familiar tension over demands to move away from carceral solutions ignores the important evidence that policing and punishment do not reduce overall states of gender violence, even as they may provide some short-term relief from crisis. This critique of the demand to defund or shift away resources from law enforcement assumes that the institution of policing has the capacity and will to resolve gender violence. It does not. I mean, we all know the statistic of the self-reporting of police when it comes to domestic violence is over 40%. And that's just the ones who admitted to it. We know the statistics of the women and femmes, especially, who go into police stations to report being raped or being harmed by their partners or being abused by their families, and the police compounding and re-traumatizing those victims. We have the evidence. If I were to do my job only 2% of the time, I would be fired. Police only really work 2% of the time. The current iteration of this familiar tension over demands to move away from carceral solutions ignores the important evidence that policing and punishment do not reduce overall rates of gender violence, even as they may provide some short-term relief from a crisis. So what they're doing is they will go into a home and they will assess the situation. Okay, this is the domestic violence. Oh, this person is trusted in the community. Let's just sweep it under the rug. Or this person can be taken in because it's actually too hard to ignore the situation. So we'll arrest this person and then we'll pretend to gather evidence and then drop the charges. It would be the National Prosecuting Authority will drop the charges. Or in the US especially, go into a situation, see that it's a black man and shoot. Not making the women or femme in the situation safer, but increasing the violence against black men. And that's why we always have to look at these things so intersectionally. It does not have the capacity, nor does it have the will to solve gender-based violence. At the most basic level, advocates of carceral reform suggest that abolitionist approaches are anti-victim, ignoring the reality that police are trained to use force rather than to prevent or address root causes of violence, which is perhaps why police officers are more likely to engage in violent behavior with their partners and other groups. Furthermore, the short-term relief associated with the state arrest and punishment is not always or even usually what survivors of violence want. It does not involve them in decision-making as to what they need and seldom restores what they lost. Okay, I'm going to ask all of you a very personal question, and you don't have to answer. But if you are listening and taking in what I'm saying, when it comes to your abuser, what would look like restorative justice for you? I've thought about this a lot because I believe in restorative justice. So what would restorative justice look like for you personally? And you don't have to answer in the chat. You don't even have to say it out loud. Just think it. What would restorative justice look like for you? What it would look like for me is my abuser paying for therapy twice a week, every week, for the rest of my life, and for my medication. That's all I want. I want the ability to restore myself. Slightly less than half of all incidents of intimate partner violence are reported to the police. Thank you. There are even fewer sexual assaults reported. Black, Indigenous, and other women of color, trans people, people in queer relationships, immigrant women, disabled people, children, those who are arguably most at risk of intimate partner violence or stranger, child protective services, police, and prison violence are even less likely to seek assistance from the carceral state. As Lee Goodmark, a University of Maryland law professor, whose Twitter name as of 2021 is Recovering Carceral Feminist, ask me how. I love that, and I didn't realize that was her. I actually follow her already. Recovering Carceral Feminist, ask me how. A major proponent of decriminalizing gender violence argues, now we know it doesn't work. We have the data that shows involvement in the criminal legal system does not deter intimate partner violence, does not lower rates of intimate partner violence, and does not make violence less severe. Chances are, when a person emerges from the carceral system, they are more likely, statistically more likely, to reoffend in the direction of the person who reported them. Thank you. Good night.
Unless you want it, please leave the pot on the stove. I'll mop it up for breakfast.
Just so adorable.
A lot of curry in it, still.
Then let me dish curry for you for lunch.
No, not like that. So I dished for Tanazila, and then there's a lot of gravy, not so much anything else.
Have it.
Yeah, as I'm saying, so leave it on the stove.
I'll leave it on the stove for you.
I'm not going to have it now.
Okay. Love you. You're handsome. Thank you for my tea. I love you. Good night. Sweet dreams. So yeah, they are statistically more likely to reoffend in the direction of the person who reported them, or seek revenge, essentially. So I do it far less now, because I just don't have the wherewithal. But I used to do regular counseling with rape survivors. So many of them were so afraid of their abusers coming after them should the trial go awry. And some people I know have already been killed by partners they reported. We have lost so many activists to their abusive partners. Abolition feminism teaches us that gender violence is a complicated social issue with deep cultural roots, and has been incorporated by the mainstream into the larger carceral project. Turning to punishment agencies and tactics of social control will not protect women and others harmed by gender violence. Survivors of violence would much more be likely to benefit if the over $8 billion spent on VAWA between 1995 and 2018 supported free and subsidized services like safe permanent housing, education, accessible health and mental health care, high-quality childcare, and job training and employment placement, in addition to collective and environmental assets such as neighborhood services that promote health and well-being, safe parks, healthy food options, cultural and arts activism, and mutual aid projects. This is what we say all the time. This is what we want. This is the future that the left wants. Even as the backlash to the call for defunding the police deploys gender violence as a smokescreen, abolition feminist engagement with gender-based harm, often unfolding at a different register on a different timetable, continue to alter the landscape. For example, Black queer feminist organizational initiatives work to create everyday forms of safety outside of policing. Both the Audre Lorde Project Safe Outside the System initiative and the Black Youth Project 100's She's Safe, We Safe campaign aim to shift culture and establish new ways of keeping each other safe within our communities and work to fight against the violence of the state, particularly the patriarchal violence of the police. And that is important. Whenever people say, especially men, white men, mostly, who sorry, I just got a very concerning message. White men who vote conservative, who say, oh, but men protect women. And our usual response on the left is, protect women from whom? From other men, yes. Yeah, then men don't protect women. But we tend to ignore the structural violence at play. That it is not men who join and four men join these organizations. If they don't join and help organizations like this and support organizations like this with manpower and finances and time and effort and the brain and the brawn, what are they doing? They're not protecting anyone. Survived and Punished supports women who have been criminalized in freeing themselves from the after effects of incarceration, partly through community education on violence prevention. One means of creating a softer landing and welcoming criminalized survivors home from prison. So many of you may know that my house is a registered safe house. One of the boxes that is checked on making this a safe house that I ticked was survivors who basically providing a soft landing for survivors who murdered or harmed their abuser to escape the violence that they were receiving. On average, women and femmes who kill their abusive partners get more time in prison than abusers. In 2020, the Movement for Black Lives organized ongoing strategic discussions on patriarchal violence in an attempt to fully integrate an abolitionist and feminist work into its political agenda. At the same time, broader state coalitions, organizations funded by federal agencies, also calling for abolitionist alternatives, spurred by the Moment of Truth statement, the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs, and an emerging network of more radical state anti-violence coalitions reflect their own collusion with the carceral state and shifting to invest in practices that address gender violence while not increasing vulnerability to gender violence of the carceral state. Motivated by the need to correct the course of anti-violence work, these initiatives span from creating alternatives to calling 911 and developing new funding streams to explicitly changing laws that criminalize or encourage over-policing. Over-policing is not going to work. Over-policing just creates more fatalities, more statistics. Dorothy Roberts persuasively argues for the expansion of the frame of abolition to include the violence of the foster care system and what she calls the family policing system. Issues related to institutions that are frequently referred to as children's protective services contribute to the normalization of carceral responses as the only means of addressing social problems experienced by poor Black families and other families of color ensconced in poverty. When, for example, the presence of rats in an apartment is used as evidence for the initiation of proceedings to protect the children by removing them from their family. It is the mother or parent who is considered culpable and penalized by having her children removed. Neither the landlord nor the larger social system is assigned any responsibility. This is what Roberts says. The abolitionist mission to liberate black people from captivity must include freeing family caregivers from state surveillance and children from child foster care. Ultimately, movements to dismantle different parts of the carceral state are working towards the same world, where all children are safe, cared for, and without the need for police, prisons, and family separation. A more expansive understanding of policing and abolition that contests the state benevolent terror, I love that phrasing, that benevolent terror, is essential to collectively building a new society that supports rather than destroys families and communities. And that idea of benevolent terror is one that governed and still governs colonial societies. Can you hear the cat yelling? In Australia, Flat Out, an organisation by and for women in the criminal legal system in Melbourne, drew attention to how prisons and systems of child and family services create more harm, but represent themselves as a mitigating protector from domestic violence. No, child services do not. Yes, you cannot hear the cat. I love you, Chris. Child services can, in its current iteration, cannot mitigate domestic violence. A benevolent dictator. I have not heard them say that yet. Mega, are you okay? Obviously not. That benevolent terrorism is something that has governed the lives of the colonized for centuries. We will feed you with one hand and terrorize you with the other. Just so you know, the hand that terrorizes you is the dominant one. In 2019, spurred by the deaths of people in jails across Australia, particularly Indigenous women, Sisters Inside started a crowdsourcing campaign, Free Her, to raise money to post bail for the release of Indigenous and other women in prison, who are often arrested and imprisoned for small unpaid debts. Sisters Inside raised over $300,000 and made visible in the process the open secret of the fundamentally capitalist and colonial roots of the prison industrial complex. These creative efforts are building in many parts of the world. In black townships outside of Johannesburg, queer and trans women have developed safety protocols and are slowly organizing broader systems of support in their communities. My house is one of them. This abolition feminism ecosystem is rarely mapped, formally named, or recognized as part of a wider internationalist movement. Sisters Uncut, a survivor-led radical feminist organization, bases its work on an internationalist and intersectional understanding of how gender violence produces and reinforces state violence, and how abolition feminism demands social transformation as the only means to ensure safety for survivors, taking visible positions of solidarity. In 2020, Sisters Uncut issued a statement in support of the Wet'suwet'en people of Turtle Island, the region known as British Columbia, Canada. They say, "From the belly of the colonial beast, Sisters Uncut stands in solidarity with those on the front lines with the Indigenous people everywhere in the global fight against empire. We recognize the direct links between gendered, white supremacist, and colonial violence. We fight colonialism in all its forms, including the imposition of patriarchal structures and the gender binary. We support the fight of the Wet'suwet people and their history-making resistance movement, where Indigenous women hold leadership. Abolition feminism requires a respect for movements towards self-determination, recognizing forms of oppression across borders as an important context for redefining both anti-violence work and freedom. And here we have a poster. You can see it a little bit there on TikTok. It says, Free Marissa. In 2013, the Chicago Alliance to Free Marissa Alexander used this image by Molly Crabapple in their efforts to support and free Marissa Alexander, a mother who was criminalized and imprisoned for defending herself against her abusive husband. After Marissa reached a plea deal in 2015, the CAFMA transitioned into Love and Protect. Good night, B. Sleep well. And you know what? I am going to stop there, even though it is a shorter reading tonight. This is about 40 minutes. Because we get to chapter 3. So we've been through abolition, we've been through feminism, and now we get to the current state of things. So we get to the now. The 3 chapters in different parts of this book dealing with abolition requires an understanding of how the carceral state is racist, is sexist, is homophobic. It is built on colonial grounds. The feminism requires us to understand how the carceral state treats women, femmes, and all gender diverse people. And then next week we'll get to the now. Actually, no, we will not get to it next week because I will not be in the country. I will be in the Republic of Cape Town. So if anybody is in Cape Town, hit me up. Yeah, let's meet up. Let's do the Cape Town things. Yeah, I'm not even going for a vacation. I'm going to the Franschhoek Literary Festival. So I'll only really be there, not even, I'm probably going to get off the plane and just sleep. But Wednesday, I'm pretty much going to be catching up with the person I'm staying with. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to be in Franschhoek. I'm returning to Cape Town on Sunday. And then I'll be there from Sunday, the 17th till the 20th. And then I come back home on the 20th. But yeah, it's going to be a whirlwind trip. I need to actually update the WhatsApp group and tell them, and then Moby and all of these people. So yeah, I'm going to be in Cape Town. So we will not be reading. We will read Arundhati Roy on Tuesday night, and then that's the only reading that we'll do for the week. I might actually move that to Monday. But yeah, let's head to the server and chat more there of why I call it the Republic of Cape Town and why I have to take my passport. Because that is a very South African thing. And for those of you in Cape Town, yeah, message me if you want to meet up. I will try to make some time in the little bit of the whirlwind of a time that I'm there. I will mostly be writing my book. All right. I shall see you all on the flip side, YouTube and Twitch. I will see you on Tuesday for reading of Arundhati Roy. So yeah, I'll catch you then. And tiki-taki, shall we make our way to the servers, to one of the servers? Because yeah, today has been a horrible day. All right. Thank you all so much for the tippy taps and the gifts and all of the things and spending time here. Remember to eat something, take your meds, drink water. Yes, no, coffee does not count as water. Somebody please tell Nikki. And yeah, today just be kind. I love you.